Hello everybody, welcome to Sane Game Studios. I'm Sane, I'm an amateur game developer. Today on Gamemaker Tutorials, we're going to be taking a look at broadcast messages. So what are broadcast messages? It's pretty simple. They are a very powerful tool. What it is you can set up, like if you want a certain chunk of code to be ran on a specific frame of a sprite or at a specific moment in a sequence, you set up a broadcast message on that frame or at that moment in the sequence, and you can then use that to run whatever chunk of code that you want to run. For today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you guys how to use broadcast messages to set up something simple like footsteps. And by footsteps, I mean like the sound effect of footsteps. So before we get into this, I'll show you guys what I have going for my starter project. It's going to look like a very simple platformer because that's exactly what it is. It's a project that I'm sure you guys have seen before if you watch my previous tutorials. But in my sprites, I just have my fall sprite, my idle sprite, my jump sprite, and my walking sprite. And this is the sprite that we're going to be using to set up our footstep sound effect. In sounds, I do have one sound, and it is SFX sound effect. I have Gamemaker playing everything through my headphones, so you can't hear it when I preview it here, but you will be able to hear the sound effect when I play it in the game. I have one room, and it's pretty simple. It just has a simple platformer setup with my player character in the middle there. Width to 1366, height to 1000. I have viewports enabled, and my viewport 0 is just hard-coded to follow the player object. I have two objects. I have oPlayer and oWall. oWall has no code. And then my oPlayer is where all the magic's happening. So in my create event, I'm just declaring my variables for getting my player input, declaring my variables for my horizontal and vertical speed, my variables for calculating my horizontal and vertical speed, and then finally a boolean to determine whether or not I am currently on the ground. And then in my step event, I am getting player input, I'm figuring out whether or not I should be moving, and if I should be, in what direction. And I'm setting my horizontal speed to equal walk speed times move, so that I move in the respective direction, but then if I am not pressing a key in either direction, this will equal 0, which will bring me to a grinding halt. If I press the up key and I am currently standing on the ground, I'm going to minus my jump height off of my vertical speed, and then finally I'm going to be adding gravity to my vertical speed at all times. And then if I am about to horizontally collide with a wall, I set my horizontal speed to 0, and if I'm about to vertically collide with a wall, like get on the ground, I set my vertical speed to 0, and then I set grounded to true. But then if I am not, place meeting on the ground, I set grounded to false. And then finally, I'm just committing to my vertical and horizontal movement. I'm setting my image X scale to be the sign of my HSP, but only when my HSP is not 0, and that's going to flip my sprite left or right to make it look like I'm actually walking left or right. And then if I am on the ground and my horizontal speed does not equal 0, which means I am on the ground and I am moving, and my horizontal speed does equal 0, which means I'm on the ground and I am not moving, I'm setting my sprite index to be sPlayer idle. And if I am on the ground, but I am moving, so HSP does not equal 0, I'm setting my sprite index to be my walking sprite. And then else, so if I'm not on the ground, if my vertical speed is less than 0, which means I am moving upwards in the negative direction on the y-axis, I'm setting my sprite index to be sPlayer jump. Otherwise, if my vertical speed is greater than 0, which means I'm moving down on the y-axis, I set my sprite index to sPlayer fall. And that is everything I have going on for this project. And especially if I run this right now, you're going to see a very basic platformer. So here I am able to move, I walk, I flip, the animation flips in each direction, I can jump, land on that, Just some real basic platformer stuff. Okay, so let's use broadcast messages and let's bring the sound effect of the footstep into the game, but on the exact frame of the animation where my foot actually makes contact with the ground as I walk. So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my sprites and I'm going to go to S player walk. And I'm going to look for the frames in which my feet are currently hitting the ground. So here my foot's in the air, in the air, in the air. Boom. Makes contact. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to click add broadcast message. And I'm going to type in footstep. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to do the same thing. Foot goes in the air, in the air, in the air. Boom, makes contact with the ground. Add another broadcast message. And again, I'm going to write footstep. So now we have the basics of a broadcast message set up. As this animation plays, when it hits this frame, it's going to broadcast out the word footstep. And then also when it hits this frame, it's going to broadcast out the word footstep. So now what we need to do is we need to set up a listener. So that's going to be something that's going to listen for that broadcast and then react accordingly when it hears it. So to do that, I'm going to set up my O player as a listener. So I'm going to go to O player. I'm going to go add event. I'm going to go down to other. And I'm going to click broadcast message. So what this event does is it sets up the player object as a listener. So now that this event exists in this object, it is going to be listening for broadcasts, and then we're going to be telling it what to do in the event that it hears a broadcast. But before it can actually hear the broadcast, we're going to need to give it some kind of, a bit of information. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be telling it what type of broadcast message to be looking for. Because like I said, there is sprite broadcast messages and then also sequence broadcast messages. The one that we are using is a sprite message. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell it to look for sprite messages by saying if event data event type equals sprite event. So what this is going to do is it's going to look at the event data, which is held in a data structure map. And then it's going to go into that map and it's going to look for the event type. And then once it finds the event type, it's going to see whether or not it is a sprite event. And if it is a sprite event, it is going to run whatever we put in between these curly brackets. So that needs an underscore. This one gets an underscore and this one does not. So the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be detecting what the word is that we are broadcasting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a local variable and I'm going to call it message, and it is going to equal event data message. So this is doing very similarly to what is happening up here, right? Where it's going to look at the DS map that is the event data, and after it gets the event type and determines whether or not it's a sprite event, it is then going to go back into that DS map and it's going to look for the value message. And then it is going to take whatever value is stored in that spot and it is going to store it in this variable. And then next, I'm going to create a switch statement. And we don't actually need a switch statement because we only have one type of message. But by putting it in a switch statement, it's going to make it much easier for you to create new events. I'm going to go case, footstep, break. So once it gets the event data of the event type and determines it's a sprite event, it will then grab the type of message that we have put in the broadcast message, and it is going to store it in this variable. And then if this variable equals footstep, we are going to play the sound of a footstep. So if audio is playing SFX footstep. So what I'm doing is I'm checking to see if audio is playing, but then I'm flipping that for not. So if audio is not playing, we are going to play that audio. Audio play sound. The sound ID is going to be SFX footstep. Priority is going to be 1. Loops is false. And then with all of this written, we can now run the game, and every single time a footfall happens, you're going to hear the footstep sound effect. See, there we go. Running beautifully. So if you're wondering if there are more uses for this rather than just using it to create sound effects, absolutely there is. Like for example, I've used it before where like if my sprite has like a bow and arrow animation where like you fire a bow, you can go to the frame of that animation where it would actually make sense to like let loose the arrow and then create a function that spawns that arrow and then make the broadcast message. And when you detect that message, run that function, fire that arrow. There's a ton that you can use with broadcast messages. It is honestly a very powerful tool. It's just footsteps are a very basic way to do this and like very basic example for what this can do. And when I was first learning how to do broadcast messages, it was because I wanted to figure out how to do footsteps. So I figured I would just do this, show you guys how to run broadcast messages, get you guys to understand how to set them up, and then from there you can experiment with what it is that you want to do with your broadcast messages. So I think that's all that I have for today. So I'm going to thank you very much for watching. I feel like this was actually a rather short and sweet tutorial. If you have any questions about what I have done, then you can go ahead and comment those down below and I will absolutely go out of my way and try to help you. If you have any suggestions for future tutorials, again, please let me know. I'm always looking for new tutorial ideas. Other than that, just the usual YouTuber jargon of just saying please like, comment, and subscribe really helps me out. And I hope you guys are having a good one. Peace out.